Hi there, today I am on the edge of the Salar de Uyuni, which is the massive salt flat high in the Andes Mountains. Now, a lot of people come here for tourism. They love to get those photographs of the reflections, which are caused by the 1 centimeter or 2 centimeter layer of water that forms on top of the salt, and you get those beautiful images. However, around the edge of the salt flat, there are a lot of interesting things which a lot of people tend to miss. So let's take a look at some of those. So when I first got here to Colcha K about a month ago, I was quite surprised to see all of these Chulpas, these ruins all over the hillside. I wasn't quite sure what they were initially, but it became clear that they were tombs, they were burial tombs. And so I started looking for any other signs of human activity that might give me a rough idea as to maybe the age of some of these tombs. So let me show you some of those videos. Wow. This is an entire village. Goodness knows how old this is. Look at these. These little houses made of stone. Some of them are pretty tall. But the nature of these starting to make me think these are not houses. They could be burial tombs, because there's no way in. Interesting. This one's over 2 meters tall. Let's see if I can get a slightly better view. Try again. Pretty amazing. More of them here. And just, goodness me, there must be, I can't count them all. There are loads of them. They all have a very similar design. So we can climb up inside. This one's pretty big. There are also signs of larger properties, but it's almost as if they've used the stones from what used to be walls of houses to then build tombs. But I stand to be corrected. Again, same wall construction style. Large stones on the outside, rubble infill on the inside. If I sound a bit out of breath, it's because we're at 3,800 meters above sea level, so the oxygen's a little bit thin. Again, just keep on looking, see if we can find anything that might suggest a date. Just searching for any fragment of pottery or anything that vaguely might indicate a bit of time. Somewhere show me the time scale. It'd be really good to be able to find something. These are pretty tall. I mean, you stand inside, some of these are 3 meters deep. They're pretty big. It's just surprising. Again, square window. Look at the height of some of these. It's incredible. Just so many of them. It really makes you think, what on earth was going on here? quite fascinating. Just to have all this history just sitting here, and just really would like someone to help explain what on earth this is all about, because it's just it's fascinating. Oh, here we go. Here we go. That's what I was looking for. There we go. Some fragments of pottery. It's quite thin. It's a nice piece of pottery there. Thicker, and this looks like the handle being broken off there. Some other smaller pieces. This one's charred or black, or painted black. Again, painted black. Ooh, that's nice. It's pretty lightweight. It's another piece. A nice curved part there. Looks like these two are related. So some are whiter on the outside, some are black. This also looks like another piece of pottery. It's different material. It's colder, it's heavier, but it has this rounded top there. There you go. Some more. It's interesting. Lots of smaller parts. Wow. There were some rains recently which look like that's the reason why these parts have been uncovered. Down in front of me there are some constructions that look like they're a little bit more modern. They've recycled the stones and they're probably used to keep llamas or something along the lines. Let's go and take a look. So I keep on finding these little small pieces of ceramics. So interesting signs of life here. Just little pieces. Dark on one side, different color on the other. Okay, this is a larger piece. Finally found something a little bit bigger. Interesting texture. Look at that. It's on the underside. Wow. That's pretty beautiful. Oh. Oh. That's a beautiful piece with the decoration on the outside. That one's really nice. Yeah, so this definitely looks like a corral, and it looks like, due to the kind of quality of the wall, which is not really made up with the same skill as the walls that are back here. Take a quick zoom and look at some of these walls. Let's say over here. See the way all the stones are put together? Much more tidy way. And these walls down here are generally messier, especially their finish along the top. So I think these are more recent and they've recycled the stones to keep llamas, probably. The floor is just littered with these, but just look at this. Look at that. Beautiful. This entire floor is littered with small pieces of ceramics. Just so much history here. Could spend days. It's a nice view over the valley. And a bird's eye view of all the Chulpas and the remains that are in this area. One of the good things about coming up here is that I've been able to observe the ruins from a different angle, and I spotted something which I want to go and have a look at. Keep on finding some really nice geology. There's quite a lot of it up on this hillside. Slightly wandered off track as I was looking at the ground for anything interesting. But here is the doorway or window. Looks quite interesting. Let's have a quick look. Wow. It's a nice little doorway there, and it goes into a square chamber. So this is the first time I found something here that actually looks like a dwelling place. There's square walls basically. Unlike the Chulpa, which is just behind it, which is round. So interesting. More Chulpas over here, but this is a little square dwelling. Interesting. However, looking at it, it's got lots of holes in the walls. So, I've got two options. Either the cementing has been eroded away, which is an option, or it was never really built as a house, but more as a place to keep animals out of the rain. Shepherds would sometimes build shelters for the smaller animals, keep them warmer at night. So that could be a possible interpretation for this as well. And once again, ceramic. Burnt on the outside, clean on the inside. So much of this. There are places where there's just so much ceramic. Ooh. Oh. Look at that. That's beautiful. There's another one. Painted. Oh, here we go. Oh, this one's really nice. Look at that. God, this is just amazing. Just pieces of ceramic absolutely everywhere. After finding the ruins the other day, I decided to go into the village and find one of the locals, work colleague, and he actually explained a lot about what we were seeing, and he actually recommended that I come and visit another place which is just a little bit further up the road, and we'll find exactly the same structures but slightly more intact. This guy explained he actually was born in a little village. Let's just see if we can find it here, just up here. So he was born here, and his family members, in fact his grandmother, actually owns these fields right here. And he said just behind these fields there are some ruins which are really worth looking at. And there they are. So that's where we're heading. So my colleague explained quite a lot about these ruins, and he said they're called Chulpas. They have two theories as to where they came from. One is that they are burial chambers where they would bury someone in a kind of fetal upright position, mummified, and they would have some personal possessions buried with them, normally not of high value. And then the other theory is that these structures were actually houses of a population that lived in this area that were actually quite small. Just kind of, he said the reason why they have that doubt is because of most of them have a little square window in them. However, looking at these structures, what they don't have is a door. So if you're going to build something to live in, you need to get in and out of it. So I think the first explanation that these are tombs makes a lot more sense. There are structures that look like dwelling places, but most of these relatively tall, 2.5 meter, some of them almost 3 meters tall, sort of round cylindrical structures seem to be tombs. It just seems the most logical explanation for these. The other thing he said is that, as far as he's aware, in all the years that he's been here and his family, there has been no archaeological investigation of these structures. So dating them is very difficult. So our best hope of dating these structures is going to be based on ceramics and possible, well, any other sort of remains that might suggest a date of some form. Architecture, of course, is another way you can identify these structures, but yeah, very interesting. The conditions here are pretty harsh. The air temperature is pretty cold. The sun is extremely strong and it will burn you in minutes. So you have to put the most powerful sunblock that you have on anywhere that's exposed and try and keep the rest of you covered up. So you always use long sleeves, and so it's kind of interesting because clear sunny day, the sun is baking hot, but at the same time the air is cold enough for you to wear a jacket. It's really bizarre. The interesting thing is that, sorry, we're at 3,800 meters now, and it's oxygen is a bit scarce. The interesting thing is that actually the more layers you put on, the less the sun hits you directly. So it actually has the almost opposite effect. It actually kind of keeps you cooler than if you were just in a t-shirt. So just coming across one of the first chulpas. Now this is slightly larger than the ones that we're finding on the other side of the hill, which is about, say, 3 kilometers that way. So interesting to see that these are at least twice the size. Let's take a look. This is interesting because it's kind of subdivided. Three different areas, but same construction style. Large stones on the outside and the walls are filled with rubble on the inside. So there are a couple of others over this way. There's another one up here, and a couple of others up here as well. So over this ridge, I think there are a whole bunch more. Let's go and have a look. It's a beautiful setting. This is the lake that's got a dam at the head, small dam, and these are the pens, corrales, that were used for herding sheep and llamas. And then here are some of these chulpas, and there are several of them further up here. So let's take a look, get a closer look. So one of the things this local resident mentioned was that these chulpas, they kind of consider them sacred, or a place to be revered, and they never touch them. They said, even if they needed to build, stone walls to keep sheep in or whatever, they would never take stones from one of these chulpas. They would always collect stones from somewhere else. So he said, if they've collapsed or if they are falling down, whatever, it's because of just natural processes, or maybe it's because they were damaged many years ago when people came thinking that the local people would bury their dead with great value, with riches and all sorts of other things. So yes, these tombs have been ransacked, raided, but nowadays it's very difficult to find any remains inside of them. Okay, just arriving at this one here. There you go, once again, with a little window inside. Interesting. It's also interesting to see that the orientation of the window so far, as I can see, doesn't seem to follow any particular pattern. I thought that initially it would overlook, well, the others were overlooking a salt flat, the Uyuni salt flat, but these ones, the windows I've come across so far are looking uphill, so no obvious reason for the orientation of the window just yet. So these chulpas are very similar to the ones came across not far away, further down the track, and also very similar to the ones that are behind the Colcha K on the edge of the salt flat. The only thing I'm noticing is that they are slightly bigger. These are slightly bigger than the rest of them. Let's have a look over here. One of the things I am noticing though is that there's very little ceramics. I'm finding a little bit, but there's a lot less ceramics than on the plain that we found the other day. There is a little bit. Oh, that's nice. One of the things I have noticed though is that these little pieces of broken pottery are always on the outside of these chulpas. They're never, I've yet to find one single piece of ceramic inside one of these chulpas. Just an interesting observation. So here's another chulpa. Same wall construction style. This one has had the outer wall collapsed, which is why light is coming through, but what I'm noticing is that they do have the same filling of what looks to be mud to try and cement this together and keep it dry by the looks of it. So another one here, and a nice little window pointing in the same direction up the hill. So the ones I found so far are pointing in the same direction. So this one's pretty intact, and you can begin to see the curvature on the inside wall here. Let me see if I can get up without dropping my camera. Okay, so this is the way they would close off the top. It would basically come together, and then they would use these flat stones, which looks like someone has moved. There's another one down there to close off the roof, basically. So this is not a structure that was done with straw or mud or anything like that. They use these flat stones to cap off the structure. So this has been very interesting. I just want to thank my friend Wilson for giving me a bit of insight as to the functionality of these chulpas. But it's quite an amazing place. It's definitely worth a visit. You're not going to find any buried Inca gold here, but you're certainly going to find a nice piece of history that very few people are going to come across. So after finding all of these broken pieces of pottery on the outside of the tombs and nothing on the inside, I went and spoke to a colleague of mine, friend of mine, who actually has been brought up here ever since he was a kid, and his entire family lineage also has lived here for generations upon generations. They actually own land up just behind Colcha K. And he enlightened me quite a bit as to why we were just finding pieces of ceramic and why they were always often blackened on one side. So what we have to understand about the local culture is that they have a very strong belief system, and that belief system obviously regulates the way they behave, and it directly relates to the burial practices that happen when someone passes away. You see, in this region When someone passes away, all of their personal belongings are burnt, along with even their personal pets. It's a bit of a barbaric tradition from that point of view, but it's something they've inherited for thousands of years. Now, what would happen is the person would be buried, and then 9 days later they would then go back and burn all of their possessions and actually break the ceramic, pottery and things that they had or they used during their life, so that they could then take their personal possessions with them when they died. They're even known to sacrifice a small llama so that they could have their pet, their llama, and all their personal possessions with them in their new life. So that began to explain why I was never finding an entire piece of pottery. It was always broken and often charred on one side. So in Bolivia there is a lot of archaeology, and there's not much investment in archaeology or investigation here in Bolivia, and you can just find it all over the place, often just left unkept. And it's kind of a shame, really. There's a lot to discover, I think, in this country. And I've always also been very interested in the relationship between geology and archaeology. Now, I've got a perfect example right behind me. This is an old wall which has been built to keep llamas out from when they used to grow crops behind this wall, but they are sitting on top of this white material. Now, that was the strange thing. I looked at this and I thought, that doesn't seem like a normal volcanic rock. Just behind us is a massive volcano. So what is this stuff? And I took a close look at it and began to find some very strange structures. Let me show you. So as you start to take a close look at this white stuff, you kind of begin to see patterns and structures inside that began to catch my attention. And then looking at the fact that it was often smooth on one side and extremely rugged on the other side. And then I began to notice that this white stuff was basically stuck to the outside of these boulders, and this pattern began to repeat itself, and you could find boulders with this white stuff stuck on the outside. And here you'd find a place where the boulder has pulled away, leaving behind what looks like coral growth. So I began to look at this, and I began to realize that there was a specific horizon. Literally, you could draw it on a topographical map, and it would follow one specific line. Began to also realize that above this specific line on the hillside, there were no more corals. So what I began to notice was that after the line of corals going uphill, where you wouldn't find any more corals, you would find a flat area and then a steep incline. And after the corals, you find a kind of general slope, sometimes steep, sometimes would be a drop off. And I began to notice that actually these corals were actually forming a fairly hard, resistant line, after which there would be a drop off. So I thought, well, hang on a moment, if this is a hanging beach or a coral reef or something along those lines, then there must be signs of this elsewhere. So as I was looking across this flat area, which is basically a hanging beach, I suddenly noticed on the opposite side of the hillside exactly the same. So there is the coral line of the hanging beach, and as we go across further away, there it is again. So what does that mean? Quite simple, but quite astounding. It means that once the water level was 27 meters above the salt flat that's down there. 27 meters. And this beach line can be identified all the way around the entire Salar de Uyuni at exactly 27 meters above the salt level at the moment. So this fascinated me, and I went out and looked for more evidence of this hanging beach, and I didn't just find one, I found several. However, the one that is highest is the one that has the clearest line of coral. You won't find any coral beyond that. So this would appear to be the highest level the water ever got. So the question then became, when was the water at this high? That's a difficult one to solve. So the question then became, when was the Salar de Uyuni flooded in 27 meters of water, making this an absolutely enormous inland lake, much bigger than the Lago Titicaca. This would have been a spectacular sight to see the entire valley of the Salar de Uyuni completely covered in water. So if the water level had been at 27 meters, let's say 1,000 years ago, then that would imply that the little village of Colcha K behind me would have been underwater when it was built. So that wouldn't work. And also some of these Chulpas behind me would have also been underwater. However, there are others, in fact most of them are actually built above this level, which might suggest that the water level was higher when most of these were built. So we mustn't forget that these Chulpas could have different ages. People repeat the same traditions for centuries in this region. Up until a few years ago, they're still burning the personal possessions of people that passed away. And so it wouldn't be unfeasible to think that the Chulpas that are higher up the hillside are older, and the ones that are lower down the hillside could be younger. And the actual village of Colcha K is also not that old. Apparently it was founded in the year 1300 after Christ. Many of the Chulpas that are up on the hillside here are definitely older, and the ceramics that I did find would indicate that these are actually pre-Inca as well. So we're talking, at least 1,000 years old, if not more. So when I spoke to my colleague here whose family has lived here for generations immemorial, he is convinced that his descendants have been here for 3,000 years. Difficult to prove. His surname is Caral, which is very interesting because the Caral people have been inhabiting the region a little bit north of here in Peru. So who knows, maybe there is some truth to that, we don't know. But he is convinced that his people have been living here for at least 3,000 years. Now it's interesting because the Caral people actually had a massive decline in their population, well, about 3,000 years ago, and the reasons cited are climate change. Now, the interesting thing is I've heard the same story for other civilizations in this region as well, citing climate change about 3,000 years ago as being a major reason for decline and for migration. Now, maybe there's some way we could link those two together. We've got a falling level of water in the Salar de Uyuni, and you have declining populations all across South America. Maybe there's a link between what used to be the old water level at 27 meters above the current salt flat and the changes that happened in this region to the local population. So it's rather sketchy evidence, but we have to think about it and investigate more. One of the things that caught my attention is that I have yet to find ceramic pieces below the 27-meter line. All of the ceramics that I've found so far have always been above this line. So that's just something that is interesting. Anyway, I'm just throwing these ideas out there. I'm sure there are people who are better informed. I'm just showing and talking about what I've seen here. But it's very interesting. There's a lot of history here and there's a lot to be investigated. I really think it's worth a bit of investment in the archaeology of Bolivia. I think there's a lot to be found, and there's certainly a lot to be understood.